Hey Gemini, this is Rebecca from Being Human Tarot, bringing you your March 2019 reading. And I know that I said last month that I was going to switch up to a different kind of spread, but I'm keeping with it for now. I also realized I have a lot of affection for this spread, so that's part of it. Another part of it was I was lazy and I didn't research things like I said I would. I'm reading this month with the Enchanted Tarot, and it's an anniversary deck, and it's huge, as you can see. So shuffling was interesting. I've already shuffled and drawn your 3 cards. The first card indicates what you want to focus on this month. The second card indicates what you want to set aside for the month. And the third card is just an additional consideration. So I'll get into your reading. Disclaimer, there may be some sounds, hopefully not after the video is edited and equalized, but I have a lovely parrot over here in the corner who's overseeing my operations, and then there's some construction in the apartment next door, so hopefully it'll be quiet, and apologize if there's a little bit of noise, but that's it. Okay, to get into your reading, for your focus of the month, Gemini, you drew the Queen of Swords. Oh, and another nice thing about these cards that I didn't mention is that because they're so huge, they have a great amount of detail. This one is actually kind of a larger image, so you might not see it as much, but you'll see it in the others, hopefully. So the Queen of Swords should be very familiar to you. You're an air sign. Swords are an air sign. Queen of Swords is, I think, like, I don't want to misquote Lindsay Mack, but I think she called her, like, the badass with the boundaries, or the bitch with the boundaries. Maybe not bitch. I don't know that she uses the word bitch, but I do, so I will own that if it's problematic for her. But, and she really is. She's no nonsense. And so that's what you need to step into and emulate this month. If people are trying to kind of take advantage of you, and sometimes this can happen in really uncomfortable ways, like if you're in a job, let's say, just as a complete random example, as a photographer, and you have friends and they're like, oh, like, will you do me this favor? And it's actually kind of like a huge, like, actual job that you would normally charge a client like a regular, like, and potentially like hefty rate for, and this friend is sort of expecting it for like free or for like super, super cheap, something like that, you know what I mean? That kind of situation. That can be tough to navigate. And like any situation with boundaries, really, you know, someone's pushing you at work. It could even be your boss. If your boss is like talking down to you consistently, and you feel like because of their position of power over you that you can't really say anything, and so you've been putting up with it, this is the month to, you know, kind of draw a line in the sand and just be like, it's not okay to talk to me like that. I'm happy to have this conversation in a different way, or, you know, whatever. But that's just one example of, you know, the Queen of Swords setting boundaries. She's very, like, truthful. She's sitting on her throne, like, you know, like, observing, just being honest, because honesty is the big thing with her. So if that's another thing, if you've been misleading someone about something, this month is the month to come clean and just be like, actually, this is what happened. So she's intense, but she's great. I love seeing her come up. So she's great to have on your side this month. But you just got to remember to be her, because it can be hard. It does not come naturally for a lot of us. So, but you're an air sign, so I feel like you have an advantage. For your set aside, you drew the Devil. which what is tempting you this month? What is tempting you that's not healthy, I should say? If you feel tempted to go to the gym, probably not the Devil card. But if you're feeling tempted to do things that you know afterward you won't feel good about, you know, it's always a good time to set those things aside, not just for this reading in March, but it's coming up for you, and so it must have particular relevance. If you've been, you know, and this can also it's sort of like joked as the sex, drugs, and rock and roll card, but the devil can take shape in so many different things that we don't think of as being like heroin, for example. Like, obviously, like, we can associate that with like a devil-like quality, right? It's addictive and bad for your body and all of that kind of stuff. But there's also things that we don't think about, and I think that are more culturally accepted, like being a workaholic. I know that in the city I live in, which is New York, it's very accepted and almost applauded if you're just working tirelessly as many hours as possible during the day. And obviously there's some people who have certain jobs where that's required, and that's very challenging. But I'm speaking more to like the jobs where that's not required necessarily, but people are, or they could draw more of a boundary for themselves. Draw a boundary for yourself, right? So if you find yourself, like, for example, if you're working somewhere and you have this much work to do because they're understaffed, but you keep on taking it all in after hours, or like maybe some of it just needs to not get done for someone to notice, you know, as painful as that can be. So I think that anyway, that was a really long-winded way to say that can be a devil-like attribute, is sort of like overextending yourself in this unhealthy way. Like, for what? In this pursuit of, you know, being the best employee. That's not, you know, I don't want to make it sound like people who go above and beyond are not, you know, unhealthy, not at all, but there's also kind of like, there's a limit, and sometimes there can be a bit of a gray area. But if you're losing sleep and things like that, that's actually affecting your health, and that's unhealthy, and that's when it's the devil. So, you know, that was one sort of long, fleshed out example, but it's not always just like drugs and you know, alcohol and stuff. When this card comes up, it can be anything we do to the point that we're extending ourselves, and or maybe not even overextending, but just we're doing something that's bad for us, even if we can't see it, and even if it's sort of like wrapped in this package of like being good for us, right? Like the work example is. So I won't go on forever about that because I already just did. But you want to set that aside this month, and you want to be aware of it. So think of, because the devil can hide in places. And so think of where it might be living for you that you haven't noticed yet. And finally, for your additional consideration, you drew the Two of Wands. There's a cute little cheat from Perchik up there. And this is great because the Two of Wands is kind of like you're formulating your next game plan. Like, where do you want to go? Maybe there's some travel involved. You're just like, the wheels in your mind are turning. Perhaps after you kind of like set these barriers and make these moves, you can have like the foundation to really decide what is it you want to do next. Like, where could you go? You know, this person's sort of like wistfully looking out in front of her, probably dreaming about the possibilities. So that's something to keep in mind. It's the additional consideration rather than the focus, but it really does feel like once you kind of clear out some bad stuff, you could have this like little reward almost of clarity and peace of mind and feeling ready for whatever's next. And that can be so liberating and exciting. So I'm excited for you, Gemini. So that's your reading for this month. I hope that you found it useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. If you subscribe and hit the bell icon, you'll be automatically notified as soon as I upload videos. And so then you'll just know when your video is ready each month. And that is it. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next month, Gemini. Bye.